So let's spend a few minutes talk about how to select the right drawable object, because as we move on in this project, you'll have a lot of objects, drawable objects on the canvas, and they are stacking on top of each other, and you always have the risk of selecting the wrong object, do a lot of changes, and realize that later and gotta go back and fix it all over again. So even though you're very careful, you gotta waste a lot of time finding it, where it is this the one, is that the one? So you select this thing right here. You don't know if the eye white or a pupil or something that is hidden or invisible, right? And so you gotta click around, move around, and you say, oh, okay, it's the iris. So I release and Control Z, go back to it. Now I can start working. So that's the kind of clumsy way to select things and confirming things. How do we do it? How many ways do we have? So instead of, so first thing is that when you are, there are two selectors. One is the drawable object edit tool, and that is the other one is the edit deformer tool, which means that if you switch to the deformer tool, you will be selecting deformers, the regular deformers or the rotational deformers. And then there's this pointer cursor, and that is when you start to select drawable objects. Now as you hover over objects, you will see green wireframe fading in, and green wireframe means that you are about to, if you are about to left click, this would be the item that you will be selecting. So it's sort of like suggesting which object are you trying to select. Now if that doesn't work for you, if it's something invisible or it's just too clumsy to do it, you can always come to the parts palette and select them directly. You can click on the group. I think group would select all the yeah, I think it does select all. Let me double check. Yep. So if you click on the group, you will see everything under that group selected. So you see a lot of vertices and polygons, and that's because everything is selected. And if otherwise, you can click on the individual objects. It could be a deformer, or it could be a drawable object right there. Now sometimes you select and you don't see anything. There are a couple of possibilities. First of all, it might be on the other side of the canvas. Well, you know. And sometimes you will see, how come it feels like it's not selected yet? How come it feels like, you know, this like gray dots and this red, dull red box? What does that mean? It feels like I cannot work with anything yet. Well, that is because you have locked the layer or the object, or the other possibility is that the current object is not on the available parameter value, because you have set certain key points on the parameter, but currently the value is not on one of them. And whenever you are not on a defined key points and you start going on moving changes, it wouldn't be valid. I forgot if it would just undo everything you do, or it would mess up a lot of big things big time. So if you see gray dots, don't move things. Always remember you're working with white clear boxes instead of gray dots. All right. So that's, you know, little thing to keep in mind. And otherwise, the other way to select things is the deformer palettes. Now, why is there a parts palette and why is there a deformer palette when they both look the same? Because you look here, they're like both hierarchies, and they show both deformers and drawable objects. Well, for one thing, drawable objects are highlighted in blue in the deformer palettes, and the other purpose is that eventually you will realize that you need this because you start to build the full structure of your model. So you got the a overall deformer controlling a neck rotation, which is a parent of a dozen of the deformer, which is a parent of another dozen of deformers, and you start to look for deformers or objects in a logic that goes through the structure. Okay, like I want to know why does this certain parameter moves the whole face. Is it the face has angle Z active? Is it the neck rotation that has the angle Z active, or something else, or which deformer it is, or is it one object that has its own angle Z active? So that is when your mind starts to tell you, instead of going by groups when they're all scattered and diverse, maybe it's better to go for deformers, because currently you're seeing, well, not very clear, but at the end, towards the end of the project, this list should be fairly clear. You wouldn't see a lot of objects spread all over the place. You should see like face deformer and neck rotation, and it got the other face deformer, and then the right eye deformer, and then the iris deformer. So everything will be a nice hierarchy according to the structure of your model, or the rig of your model. I will talk about, like my tutorial teaches how to rig things in one structure, but there's more than one way to do it, and it's up to your own preference. But it's sort of, some of the options are counterintuitive, which you want to avoid. I don't know, maybe that's all subjective. But anyhow, so these are two ways to select things. It works the same. So you can select objects on the deformer, and it will also select things on the canvas, and you will know you're picking the right thing. Now there's one way to reverse a selection, okay? For say like, I want to know this object, which group does it belong to, because this object might be locked, and I need to unlock it, or I need to change the opacity, or I want to check if it's in right group, it's in the right deformer, or whatever, right? You want to click on this, and then find it here, when everything could be collapsed or hidden in layers and layers of branches. All right. So how do you do that? There is a double arrow button right here. It's called collapse tree when selected. Now that doesn't suggest anything, but the idea is that when you have this turned on, whenever you select anything on the canvas, it will expand the tree all the way down to the object you're selected. So you can open up the tree in the objects that you selected, all right? I think it works the same if you have it down here and select this, or do I have to turn it on? Okay, I don't think this one would affect this one, but the same thing. You got double arrow icon whenever you turned on, and you have your tree collapsed, and when you select an object, it would expand all the way down to that object. So maybe not very relevant now, but if you find, you spend a lot of time finding things over here and over there and over here and over there, then maybe it's time to figure out these little functions and features that help you on the way. And let me see, we got this selected. Okay, so the ultimate way to select an object on the canvas, especially when they're all stacked on top of each other or they're invisible, this is the way you do it. Right click. Remember to always, you got to use the edit drawable object tool, and right click on a spot. You will see this option, select drawable object, and it would show a list of objects. Whenever you hover them on the menu, you will see them highlighted in pink wireframe on the canvas. So yeah, this is the best way to select things, because it's sort of like detect the area and say, okay, maybe this user wants to select all these things. And if they are locked, it will show a lock icon. If they're invisible, they will still show up on this menu. And the other thing is select deformer for parent. I don't usually do that, but yeah, it's less common to use that button, so I'm not going to talk about it. So there's also other options like lock and show and all these things. You can check around, and there's a reflects tool right here. I'll talk about it in the next episode, because in the next episode I'll talk about how to flip your eyes over to the left side. I don't recall if I mentioned in previous episode that it cannot be done perfectly, or I might be replying to comments that there is no efficient way to reflect things from the right side to the left side. There I figured out there is, and so I'll talk about that in the next episode, because instead of doing all over, let's just flip over. How about that? Let's flip over. All right. Of course, this only works if your character is is facing forward, so left and right is symmetrical. If it's like a tilted angle or some other reasons that it's asymmetrical, then you cannot simply flip the eyes over. All right. But assuming it is, in the next episode we will talk about that.